Welcome back, everybody, to my monthly dose of Super Mario goodness. This week's game is a very interesting one, and by that I mean it has a very interesting backstory. During my Lost Levels review, I mentioned that Shigeru Miyamoto and Kensuke Tanabe were working on a new game engine to incorporate into a Super Mario Bros. Sequel. And then something happened in the company that took their prototype and made it into a completely different game. If I may elaborate a little more, this engine would allow for games with vertically scrolling screens as opposed to the horizontal scrolling in Super Mario Bros. Then Nintendo entered a partnership with the Fuji Television Corporation that allowed them to use Fuji's characters as the protagonists for an upcoming game. Since Tanabe and Miyamoto's engine was used as the basis for it, the Mario prototype soon became Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic. Because Nintendo of America wouldn't allow Lost Levels to be exposed to the rest of the world, I guess they took a look at Doki Doki Panic and thought, hey, this would be a great Mario game. So they basically just took out the Fuji character, slapped Mario's face on it, and renamed it Super Mario Bros. 2, which saw a release for the NES on September 9th, 1988. It was also released in Japan as Super Mario USA in 1995 so that people don't confuse it for Mario 2 Lost Levels. So, technically speaking, Mario 2 USA is actually the real sequel, but in other ways it's not, then in other ways it is, and in other ways it's not. Just trying to explain it makes my brain hurt. But whatever, here's the game. Now let's see how exactly it compares to the original. While in his dreams, Mario comes across a stairway that takes him through the entrance to Subcon. It's a dream world, subconscious, so it's called Subcon. Ha! There, its inhabitants tell him about a bad guy named Wart threatening to take over their world. And then Mario wakes up. Boy, those mushrooms must really be super after all. The next day, Mario and his friends enter a cave for some reason, and coincidentally happen to find a door very similar to the one Mario saw in his dream. They go through the door and end up in Subcon. Okay, so is this still Mario's dream, or did he just happen to come across that door before, and that's what led to the dream? Well, spoiler alert, it's all still in Mario's dreams. So, the plot's really nothing to write home about. It's also painfully vague in what it's trying to accomplish that I can't even tell what it's trying to accomplish. But the story's not important. What matters is if the game's any good. The first notable departure from the first game, among the many I'm going to cover later in the video, is that now there are up to 4 characters to play as. You got Mario and Luigi, of course, but now you can play as Princess Toadstool, and even Toad, that dream-crushing jerk. Mario doesn't have that many distinguished characteristics except for his name. Luigi retains his high jump and terrible traction from the Lost Levels. Princess Toadstool can float in the air for a short period of time, and Toad's the fastest with the best running speed and greatest strength. I admit, I'm biased. I play as Mario and Luigi the most. What? I can't help myself. Another thing you'll notice is that the gameplay is a completely different ballgame. Instead of jumping on your enemies, now you have to pick them up and throw them at other enemies, which I admit is more satisfying than just jumping on them. You can also pull up vegetables out of the ground and toss them around. Other times a turtle shell or even an extra life can be in the ground.
Just go with it.
So, there you have it. This is also the first Mario game to incorporate a health meter, something we would later see in future 3D games. You initially start out with 2 hearts worth of health, but you can increase it by locating super mushrooms in the dream world within the dream world.
Just go with it.
You can also find coins here that you can wager in the slot machines at the end of each level to earn extra lives. But your chances of getting all cherries here are as good as none. Back to the health system. Once you take a hit, you have to collect another heart to replenish your health. Hearts can randomly float up from the bottom of the screen by killing a random amount of enemies. I'm not sure how this works, but I'm not the programmer. Once you take too many hits, you lose a life. Lose all your lives and it's game over, just like before. But unlike the first Super Mario Bros., there's actually a continue option incorporated into the game without being a cheat. Lost Levels had this too, but here your continues are limited to only 2. Use them all up and it's back to the beginning for you. At least with the continue cheat in the first game, you can continue as many times as you want. I don't understand why they decided to limit the continues you're allowed to use. It's like they're trying to test my patience. Anyway, the structure of the game is also showing some differences. There are only 7 worlds this time, and each one with roughly 3 levels, not counting the last world. At the end of each level, you're either bombarded with enemies or a boss battle with different entities. These entities arrive in the form of Mouser, the bomb-throwing mouse.
Just go with it.
Tri-Clyde, the 3-headed snake that spits fireballs out at you.
Just go with it.
Clawgrip, the crab with the mistranslated name.
Just go with it.
Or Birdo, the gender-confused dinosaur that spits eggs out of its nose.
Just go with it.
The big baddie of this game is Wart, the giant frog king who apparently doesn't know the meaning of the phrase, eat your vegetables. Yes, the final boss of the game is a giant frog that can only be killed by throwing vegetables in its mouth.
Just go with it.
My favorite aspect about this battle is that the vegetables come from the Dream Machine, the key source of Wart's power. I'm not even going to question it. The battle itself is a bit tricky, but overall isn't that bad. You know what is tricky, however? Getting to the battle in the first place. World 7-2, the final level in the game. This place is like a maze. Sometimes when coming out of a door, I'll end up going in a direction that takes me to another door, where it then leads me down a path toward the door I came out of in the first place. There are 2 Birdos to fight, and before you can go through the entrance to Wart's hideout, you have to fight it. I'm fighting an exit! Sounds like Jaden Yuki there for a second. So once you get that out of the way, you beat Wart, the inhabitants of Subcon do something to him, and the game ends. Well, that happened. So, let's end with a little bit of presentation. Super Mario Bros. 2 looks excellent for an NES title. Everything's much more colorful than before, characters are better detailed, and animations are simply charming. The music is probably the best part of the game for me. What Koji Kondo did with the sound compared to his work in the first Super Mario Bros. Allows for a much catchier and upbeat soundtrack than before. For real, this soundtrack tops everything the first game had, with the obvious exception being the overworld theme. So overall, what's my verdict on Super Mario Bros. 2? Well, it's good, but a little hard to comprehend. I mean, there are things about it that I think are a step up from the first game. It looks and sounds better, and with it having multiple playable characters, that means you can find different ways to advance through the game, thereby encouraging multiple playthroughs. But the thing with Mario 2 is that it feels like it goes by so quickly that I can't even begin to process the adventure I just went on. If I can make up for that really lame excuse, I can definitely say that the good stuff was very good. The moments when I was having fun were definitely the most memorable part of the experience. It was much more fun and frantic than the original Super Mario Bros., and it was especially more forgiving than the lost levels. So even though the game as a whole is almost a bit too inscrutable to talk about, I can easily say I had fun when I did. But if you're going to experience Mario 2 USA for yourself, I recommend getting the Game Boy Advance port. If you ask me, it's much better and more comprehensible than the NES version. Plus, there are Yoshi eggs and special coins that you can find, which could increase replayability depending on whether or not you're a fan of collectathons. It's on the Wii U's Virtual Console service now if you're curious to check it out, so go ahead and see what you think. I apologize if this review comes off as lazy to some of you. It's just that with Mario 2, while I admit I had fun with it, there's something about the way it presents itself that just seems indescribable and tough to approach. But I can at least give you something better to look forward to, my next review. Tune in next time for my review of Super Mario Bros. 3. Until then, I'll see you guys later.